All right, into segment 2 here, and today we're going to look at lineages, how they formed, specifically going to look at the two Takagi-Yoshin and Togakure Ryu, and they were formed by, quote, losers. This is the part that's really got me intrigued, just because, you know, my limited knowledge of Japanese history and culture is that, you know, with the whole samurai writing the history books, it was like if you were a loser, you know, you stuck a knife in your gut and somebody cut off your head and nobody cared about the rest of your story because you lost. And it was a shameful thing, and that was it. So the whole, I think that's going to interest a lot of people that are into the history and culture part of this, that these were, quote, losers, and here they end up forming two of the, you know, some of the important lineages that make up ninjutsu as a whole today.
I'm going to introduce this with something from one of the Karate Kid movies. Okay? So they don't need to go to my website for this. They can pop in Karate Kid 2, I think is what it was.
It's been on TV lately, too. So
has it?
Yeah, I flipped by it the other night.
My daughters love it, and it's a great primer to the whole philosophy of why you would learn and things like that, because his big thing was we're not fighting unless we have got no other choice. You know, that kind of thing. But I think it was number 2, but it was the one that he went to Okinawa. Right?
That's 2.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Anyway, he's finally cornered by this ex-best friend, right, to fight.
Right.
And he makes a deal. Finally makes a deal and says, look, no matter who wins, no matter who loses, the village is safe.
Right.
Right? Remember that?
That's the threat. If you won't fight me, because he kept turning him down, if you won't fight me, I'm going to bulldoze the village.
That's right.
Yeah.
So his big thing was, Miyagi's big thing was, you want me to do this, no matter who wins or who loses, the village is safe. And of course, Sato says, you know, it's too much to ask. And he says, well, you know, not too much for your honor or something like that. You know, oh, not too much for your honor. Anyway, but that's not the point. The point was afterwards, when he's going back into the house, Daniel-san says something like, I don't know, who's going to referee? Or, you know, how do you know who wins? Or something like that. And Miyagi says, well, it's simple. The one who wins is still alive. It's like, you know, Daniel-san's freaking out because that's just completely against our Western idea of a contest.
Right.
You got referees, you got whatever, and no, there's a clear winner and there's a clear loser, right? The loser gets to eat bugs, and the winner gets to go on with their life. But what Miyagi says is, it doesn't matter if I win or lose at this point. I've already won. No matter if I win or lose, the village is safe, which is what he wanted anyway.
Right.
So here's this idea, right? Here's this concept that I don't matter as much as this thing that I'm willing to fight for. And that's the big difference between a warrior, which we'll talk about in a bit, but a warrior and somebody who's just a fighter, who just likes that stuff, right? To them, it does matter who wins. As a matter of fact, that's why they're fighting, right? When an attacker or when a fighter's throwing a punch at me, what he's implying with his body actions is that he's right. And he's willing to knock me down to make it happen. Doesn't matter if he's philosophically right, if he's anything right.
Right.
Okay? He just believes that the person standing is right, see? Okay? But so let's start with Togakure. Daisuke Nishina was a young samurai in this battle, and you can look it up. I mean, you don't need me describing all this stuff, but he was a young samurai, and his side lost. It lost. Okay, during that time, the losers were required to commit ritual suicide, seppuku, right? And if you didn't, that's okay. They came around and did what we've come to know as a head count. It's too difficult to carry all the bodies back to prove how many we killed, so we'll just take their heads, right? But they would come around and kill everybody. You don't want anybody with the dissenting view that you were fighting over left behind, right? Well, he was bound to do this, right? Well, maybe. See, prior to the whole battle, he had taken a vow with his leader that should something happen to the leader, Daisuke would protect the leader's family. So he was bound beyond the battle to do something above and beyond. His duty wasn't over because the battle was lost. As a matter of fact, when his leader died, everything shifted. So we have an ideology here that goes far beyond self, right? Well, what he had to do was run away. Had to run away, and after this, I mean, they would search for days or weeks or months or whatever for members of the opposing army to finish these people off, right? So he went to the mountains high above Nagano in the it's now known as Togakushi. That region is now known as Togakushi. Well, you've been there, you know. That's where you asked me to be a groomsman in your wedding.
Yeah.
I remember that. But anyway, not that you people need to know that, but anyway, just reminiscing.
It was a very nice hike.
It was a very nice hike. And you know how many people in the Bujinkan have no idea or have never been to the Togakushi shrines?
It's not a very common thing.
I know, and over the years I've been talking to people, and they wonder why I'm going on all these little trips and taking my students and stuff, and I tell them about the history and everything. I mean, at the top shrine right there where we took that little detour, and I had you guys go across that kind of a fallen tree bridge kind of thing to stand where the dojo stood. In that clearing, right, where Daisuke Nishina trained when he was a student just like you, and there was a Yamabushi there, but that's where his dojo stood. I mean, most people have no idea. As a matter of fact, 2006, my 2007 trip, spring trip, snow was still covering up there. When I went up there, I thought some spaceship had landed because there was a mound. Circle in that clearing. It was still covered with snow, but there was this mound, right? And we're trying to figure out what happened. And here the Yamabushi still go to that site as a power site, and they walk in a circle around this. While they're walking and chanting, of course, they're packing snow, and then as the other snow melted, the mound stayed higher. So here was this, they're still going up there and empowering this area that has been important to us for 900 years.
Yeah,
you know?
Wow.
But most people have no clue. They've also never visited the museum. Now it's a neat little ninja museum. There's the museum there for the Togakushi region right across the street, you know, because it's just this cheesy ninja house, right? Well, maybe, except that 70% or more of the stuff that Hatsumi Sensei inherited from Takamatsu Sensei, including giant black and white pictures. You've been there. Giant black and white pictures of the training in the early days with Hatsumi Sensei and what we now know as the Shihan, right? These master instructors, when they were just working this stuff out and training and having a good time and stuff. All this stuff is up there. All these, historic and prehistoric shuriken and weapons and things like that. It's an amazing place, right?
Yeah, very neat place to visit.
And most people have no idea. But anyway, so for me to be talking about something even more historical than that, well, I wouldn't be surprised if people didn't know. But anyway, Daisuke Nishina escaped from the battlefield, right? Went into these mountains, right? And happened upon this this I don't know, warrior sage, we might call him, warrior wizard, I don't know what you would call him, because he understood fight tactics, he understood strategies and things like that. Had a lot of this wisdom that came in from China earlier on. But knew a lot of this Mikyo stuff and just a lot of things for transforming the inner person and tapping into things that we humans are born with. Society just strips us of the abilities, but they're still in there, right? Anyway, runs into this guy named Kane Doshi, and this guy just opened his eyes to all kinds of stuff, okay? And, he becomes... He comes back in with this material, teaches, of course, his son, some other students, and his son teaches his son. And it wasn't until actually the grandson was training and doing this stuff that he actually named the lineage after his grandfather. Now, once Daisuke Nishina came back down off the mountain, kind of a new man, right? He did something that's typical in Japanese society when a major transformation in life happens. He gave himself a new name. So he dropped his the name Nishina and took on the Togakure for the region where he had done all this stuff. So Daisuke Togakure, right? So the grandson, though, actually named the grandfather as the founder of the lineage instead of going, oh, well, see, since I'm going to write everything down, it's going to be me.
Right.
No, it wasn't. But when people look at that list, they might assume that Daisuke Togakure cataloged all this stuff. Now, it wasn't until it was still working 2 generations later and still producing results that it started to take on the shape of a formal lineage. But here's this idea, right? I mean, in one context, this guy's a loser, right? He's on the losing side,
right?
You lost. Screw you. You're done, right? Get out of there. But for much greater reasons, okay, he went on. And because he didn't kill himself right there on the battlefield, found much more power, much more in the way of skills, much more in the way of ability by running into this teacher. He didn't expect to do that. I mean, you know, he was already this trained soldier, this trained samurai, and life was different. Right? And here we are, you know.
Seems like an important lesson on, I guess, perseverance, which is very important. That just because he lost, you know, so much more came out of it that maybe he looked at, you know, took the loss and turned it into furthering, as opposed to just giving up.
Well, could be.
You know,
could
I
be.
lost. It's everything's over. It's all done.
Yeah, I like to see it also as a lesson in personal clarity. You know, what's my purpose? What is my purpose in this life? Okay, we're always going to be tripping and falling down. We're always going to be making mistakes and things like that. But those people with these huge egos, the ones that can't be seen to make a mistake, and God knows, the higher the rank, the bigger the problems, right? But why are you doing what you're doing? Okay? I wrote an article on the difference between a fighter, a soldier, and a warrior. You remember that one, right? And it all goes back to intent. Why are you doing what you're doing? You know, if you've got to do this stuff to show off and look good for people and brag about your rank, even if you do it in a humble, passing way, just attempt on to, but rank doesn't matter. Yeah, I know. Yeah. You're only saying that because Hatsumi Sensei said that. But why are you doing it? You know, if you got to do it because other people will look up to you because you're doing it and things like that, you're a fighter. You're just, you know. If you're doing it because it's your job, it's your duty, it's your obligation, right? Soldiers get paid to fight. They don't get to choose the enemy, right? I'm not saying that what they're fighting for is wrong. What I'm making a point here is that when I was in the military, I was a soldier. I was already indoctrinated into our country's ideology, philosophy, whatever. If I was born somewhere else and went into the military, guess what I would have believed in protecting? I'm not saying that what I was protecting is wrong. What I'm saying is I was getting paid to do a job. I didn't choose the enemy. If we were fighting somebody that ideologically, personally, I kind of thought they were right or whatever, I don't get that choice. And if I take that choice, well, then I'm going to die as a deserter or traitor or whatever. Right? It's warriors who get to choose sides. You know, I mean, they get to decide what's important, what's in line with their ideology and philosophy. Kind of jumping on the warrior thing here. Sorry about that, but that's okay. That's coming up. That's where he did. That's what Daisuke Nishina did. I mean, did he have a job? Did he have a vow to somebody else? Yeah, but you know, could have killed himself. Could have gone, no, you know what? The social standard of me killing myself outweighs this guy's, and what's he going to do? His family will never know. You know, I could have died on the battlefield. Right? Could have taken one route. Could have just escaped and ran away and never been seen or heard from again. See what I'm saying? So what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Okay. There's an old saying that what you do speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you're saying. But there's also another old saying that says the best sign of a person's character is in the way they treat the people least important to them, or in the way they make decisions about the things in life that are least important. It's easy to make decisions or be friends with people who will give you something, who will make you look good, who, you know, whatever, give you rank or whatever. How are you treating the store clerk, you know? How do you do your job when nobody's looking? That kind of thing. Yeah. It's a huge difference, right? Yeah. Anyway, do we have time for Takagi-Yoshin now that I've done all that talking?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, okay. General consensus, if you're listening and you want to hear about Takagi-Yoshin, raise your hands. Oh, sorry. Anyway.
Doesn't work in this medium.
Sorry. Anyway, I forgot I wasn't at the dojo at a seminar. Anyway. Okay, so Takagi-Yoshin, right? Founded by Oryomon Takagi a bunch of centuries ago, right? We're talking, I think, 17th century, something like that. Anyway, this guy was already a master of... I can't remember what the name of the lineage was, but he was a member of a master of this school, and then it was even considered traditional martial arts, right? Got his butt whooped in a match with somebody else. But what didn't happen to him that typically happened during those days when a match took place,
Yeah.
a contest took place,
Right.
the other guy didn't kill him. Left him in shame. Okay? Well, he realized that there was something seriously wrong with the stuff that he'd been learning because it didn't work. Because it was designed for a different time, different tactics, different types of attacks. At that point, he was a master of this traditional style, and he was attacked and beaten by somebody who was doing more what we might call modern things.
Okay.
Right? So, as far as I'm concerned, there's already something wrong with the way he's learning, because I know that what we're studying today, even though it was developed between, 11 and 1300 years, or I'm sorry, 6 and 1300 years ago, and came in even before that through China, India, those kind of things, and it's still working. I know that stuff, the way it was done, will still work against a street fighter throwing a good right cross at me, okay? Because I understand how it works strategically. He doesn't have to throw a Bujinkan punch at me for this stuff to work. He can throw a right cross, he can throw a roundhouse kick, he can do a taekwondo move, he can be a wrestler or whatever. It works as long as I understand how it was developed, where the technology came from, and what it was designed to work against. If I understand the strategy and not just the moves, it works just fine. I don't have to modify it, anything, okay? But anyway, long story short, he just quits. He just denounces, whatever you want to call it, this traditional lineage that he'd been studying, and took about a year, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. It takes him about a year, and doesn't do anything but research. He goes around and watches fights, watches contests, watches other people train, teach, that kind of thing, right?
Sure.
And he starts picking up on these other ideas and watches what's going on. But the other thing he's looking at also is not just how people are fighting as far as like the defender. He's watching what kind of attacks are being used, okay? And then he takes some time and goes up onto Mount Hyezan, okay, where the Tendai sect is, okay? Big connection in all of our lineages. Tendai keeps popping up a lot. I know. You don't have to do that stuff to, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, goes up onto Hyezan and goes into retreat, and as the historical description is, goes into meditation. Of course, they all go into meditation. Anyway, basically, he's reflecting on all this material. He just gets away from the world. He doesn't have to worry about conflict if you're up on top of this mountain with a bunch of monks. You don't have to worry about day-to-day stuff, right? So wouldn't it be nice if we had something like that today where you could just, take a break,
Rehab.
Yeah, well, taking a break today is...
Not,
I think taking a break today means going to McDonald's or something like that. So, pay them for a meal that's barely ingestible. Anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, he goes up there and he really starts to sort this stuff out, right? And really starts to consider, what are the most common things I'm going to have to worry about, or people are going to have to worry about, right? Okay, now what's viable for that? And he really settles on the whole idea that the key principle is in the whole balance breaking. And where he failed was that the fact that he needed to rush in and beat this guy early instead of letting this guy do what he's doing, kind of be aware of what kind of attack is probably going to be coming at him, right? And then learning how to break this guy's balance physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, that kind of thing, before he tries moving in on him, right? Get this guy shaken off balance before you try to do anything, right? And then he's thinking, wow, this works, but what if the guy's good at that? What if he can beat that? What if because he watched some really good fighters in this year, that were able to break balance or recover from broken balance and that kind of thing, right? And he finally takes that on to settling on learning how to break your own balance. And I don't mean physically either. I mean last second, a technique just comes out of you that you didn't even expect to happen because you're in the moment and you can suddenly see an opening at the point where you're about to deliver one strike, and you suddenly see something else that works better, and you take that opportunity. Now, this isn't something that could be planned before you bow to your partner and do your contrived setup that looks awesome in the dojo, right? And we've talked about how many times you watch a demo and people get up to try to impress the teacher or try to impress sensei or whatever. Just, if you're called out to show something, and get out of the way, because they only wanted you to present something so they could see if they had a bad model to work off of or a good model to work off, and now the lessons are really going to start. You didn't get to be teacher. You got to give them a seed to work with, and now here's the lesson, right? Anyway, but long story short, here you have this guy who, instead of going away in shame, or instead of clutching even stronger to his, his style, look at all these years. I mean, God, if I quit now, look at all the time, money, effort, whatever, wasted. Oh, and by the way, historically, martial arts training was frickin' expensive. You had to have some serious money or wherewithal to be able to afford a teacher. These guys needed to be able to support themselves when war wasn't going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why would they just hand this stuff out? Give it to somebody with total disregard as to who this person was, and maybe this person during a bad day would use it on them? These guys got to be old masters because they were smart. But, so this belief that, it should just be given or whatever. No, absolutely not. The student is always made to work for it. And in today's world, no student's going to stick around for the year and a half, 2 years that teachers used to make them come back, scrub the floor, do their laundry, all that kind of stuff to make them prove themselves. So how else are you going to prove yourself? Give up something that's important to you, right? And besides that, the teacher's available 6-7 days a week like I am. Guess what? I'm not working at, Joe's Laundry down the street or whatever. I'm available for my students morning, evening, weekends, that kind of thing, for classes, seminars, and all that. This is what I do. So I'm not justifying the whole price structure. What I'm saying is people that argue that martial arts should be free or cheap or whatever, one, want things to fit their situation instead of changing their situation, and two, are as ignorant of history as you can get, because it was not that way, right? Anyway, so here's this guy who got beaten down and decided to rethink the whole idea, which begets why we're doing this stuff anyway. I think, I don't think I'm any better as a practitioner than most of the people that are out there. I don't think I'm worse either, but I think I do have something that most people don't have, and that's actual real-world experience dealing with things. And Natsumi Sensei has always told people, go find people that have experience. Not just a teacher that can teach you the moves, but go find people. It doesn't matter if they're a white belt, green belt, black belt, 15th dan, it doesn't matter. Okay, find people who have been there, because they may not be able to teach you all the techniques, but they can sure as hell teach you why you or how you better train, because they've been there and they know what it's like inside that bubble called a fight. Yeah. So, were they losers? I don't know.
It seems like a redefinition, depending on the definition of what a loser is.
I think you're a loser if you're bent on and worried about winning. In that context, sure. If you can take a bad situation and turn that into a positive, productive thing where you come out on the other end more powerful, there is no winner or loser. There's only ability. There's only results.
I've got a comment here that I got this off of our forums, and it's a really great place to go if you have questions, discussions. It's all there. warriorconcepts.forumco.com. Check it out. Get registered, signed up, and you can post and see a lot of the great discussions that have gone on there on the forum. But I got this off there. This is from John, and talking specifically about Ryu-specific training. Says there are those who say that general movement is what's important, and that since Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu is a body of knowledge made up of the important aspects of all 9 schools, there's no need to study the schools specifically. Other people think that studying the schools individually is valuable because it teaches you different ways of moving and different ways of using the same tools. And John, interested in getting some opinions and starting a discussion on that. So, I mean, should people specifically pull out individual lineages and study those, or is it all in there so I don't need to study it?
Yes. I really irritate people with answers like this.
Yes to both?
Okay? Yes, absolutely.
Yes to both.
This is the same. This is no different than any other argument. Should we have prayer in schools or not? Should we have religion over here or not? It's, again, ignorance of history, right? Yes, the Bujinkan is an amalgamation. How about that? $50 word out of a $5 mouth. Okay, it's a coming together of 9 different schools, again, that were developed during different times, different regions. Right, some are mountainous, some are port side, that kind of thing. They're all designed to handle different types of conflict. They're not all generic, what I call mathematical martial arts. If he punches you, do this, right? This is our style for handling this. Why? Why is that your style for handling that? Okay. Why is that different than this one other than the move is different? Okay. It's different because you're trying to get a different result. Okay. You know, in Takagi-Yoshin Ryu, right? You got a lot of close quarter stuff or kneeling things, indoor kind of things, right? We don't have the same kind of buildings that they had in ancient Japan. So you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But the idea was to bring a guy down under your hakama and to limit his movement and crush him down, right? Because if you hit him too far away or you had one of these driving strikes, he'd just bounce off a wall and come right back in on you because of the structure of these places, right? But if I'm in a parking lot and I'm attacked getting into my car and there's another car right behind me, which would literally be beside my car or whatever, anywhere in there I am, I've got a close situation here. We can't be wrestling up against the cars because I eliminate any ability or any what do I want to say? Any ability to break his balance. If he can lean up against the car, or if we're ground fighting,
right?
You know, what's the thing you can't do when you're ground fighting with somebody? Break his balance. He's already down. You're both hugging gravity, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I have to be able to do things in a way that allow me to operate in that smaller space and not allow him to use the other objects, the wall, the cars, whatever, for bracing or for leverage, right? So very different, right? So everything here was developed for different reasons. So there are specifics, but the way I tend to cover things with my students is that up until first, maybe second degree black belt, the majority of their training, unless they get involved in specialty workshops or whatever, but for their rank, we're really looking at Ichimonji as a generic kind of thing, right? When eventually, you know, Koto Ryu has Seigan, Kukishindo Ryu has, Kata Teihichi no Kamae, Gyoko Ryu has Ichimonji no Kamae, but they all look different, right? Why? Why do they look different? Okay? Where are the open windows? What are they trying to bait the other person to throw as far as an attack goes, right? What's the general strategy that those schools were either trying to create or that they were dealing with, right? So that doesn't matter for a new person. A new person, get the general feel and idea of what we're doing here. Defensively, offensively, evasively, right? Here's this technique to put on there. We give it a name, right? Onikudaki, omotegi onikudaki, ura onikudaki, right? Well, okay, what's the difference? Well, one, the arm goes over his upper arm, the arm goes under his upper arm, but you lever him the same way, right? Okay, great. Well, did Kukishinden deliver an onikudaki the same way that Gyoko? It doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter. To learn to do this one as a base model to get an idea, right? So I don't worry about the specifics until a student gets high enough where they're not looking at step-by-step mechanics anymore or basic self-defense. They're looking at creating results, right? So, how are we dressed? All these scenario-based kind of things. I mean, I've given this description in the dojo. We've got a pretty big school with 2 classrooms and, front door, back door, that kind of thing, right? Well, if somebody invades the school and I want to get them to the back door and we're in the back training room, every technique I do has to move him toward that back door, right? But how is he attacking me, right? What kind of fighter is he? One of our lineages is better at handling those kind of things or the kind of scenario we're in than the other ones. So, you know what I mean? To inundate a student with all those extra details before they understand even how to get a handle on this machine called their body, I think is the sign of a teacher who's not paying attention to what their students need. And I don't mean that in an offensive way toward anybody, but the greater majority of people who call themselves teachers are nothing more than information conveyors. They go to a class, they learn something cool, and they can't wait to get back to their dojo to show everybody, when in reality, those people should be working on stepping into kamae or delivering punches against targets and things like that to get really good at those pieces before they go sewing them together. I don't care if that person can do a Chuden level kata from the XYZ. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Any monkey can duplicate these kata. Okay? It was even proven. Do you see the stuff on the internet there where some teacher had taught his chimpanzee how to do Taekwondo?
Yeah.
Skippy doo. You think that chimpanzee is going to defend himself with Taekwondo if he's ever jumped by another chimpanzee? No, he's going to fight like a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
Right? So any monkey can learn the step-by-step things of these lineages and even get pretty good at them. But the trick is, can they do it in a fight against somebody throwing full-speed stuff at them, being able to change, adapt, and whatever, and not throwing a Bujinkan punch or whatever? Can they do it against a punch from their neck of the woods or their part of the world, or you know what I mean? Can they switch out the punch for a knife? Can they? Mm-hmm. That's results. That's mastery. Okay? Mastery is not regurgitating textbook stuff, and I don't care if it came off a scroll and it's physical or it's you memorized the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't care what it is. Tell me what that means. Show me that you understand, because you can produce results with it. All right. It's one thing to be able to duplicate it because you're showing off in a controlled environment in the dojo and you're doing a demonstration. That's a whole other world. Again, when the defecation's hitting the ventilation and you're trying to do a kata against this guy who's trying to break you into pieces for your money, your woman, whatever, and you've only ever thought about it the traditional way, the official way. If that's what you're doing, if that's the way you're training, then by all means, just admit that and say, that's why I'm training. I just think this is a cool thing to train that way. I have a friend who says, he's really not all that worried about self-defense, so he trains in this art for body movement mechanics and to have a good time and all that, and that's his big thing. Great. Thank you for your honesty. Now, we can discuss things on that level, but don't come at me with this self-defense stuff when you can't start your movements unless you start with a certain kata, because you'll be lost without it. And I've seen that kind of stuff as well. Sorry.
The questions, the comments, they're very important, so make sure that you get them in. It is warriorc@warrior-concepts-online.com, so you can always email them that way. And again, check out the forums. There's a link online, but it is warriorconcepts.forumcode.com, and you can get signed up today. Coming up, we'll discuss becoming a warrior. Shidoshi Miller's written an extensive article about that, along with many, many others. Many are published online. You can search for them and find them that way, or grab links from the website. But also, just something quick off this Takagi-Yoshin, there is a video available that you've produced and put out dealing with some of the techniques. So if anybody wants to specifically take a more detailed look at Takagi-Yoshin, that is available.
Absolutely. It's actually a seminar that we had videotaped a couple of years ago. So if you're looking for entertainment style or Hollywood type quality, you're going to be disappointed, because it's in the dojo. We just had the camera off to the side, and we caught all the action and everything. But it's not perfect. But what we did was we ran a seminar on the whole first level scroll, the Shoden no Kata. So Takagi-Yoshin Ryu, Shoden no Maki, and it's been hugely popular because people are trying to get this information. And not only the kata there, but I'm real big on discussing the who's, what's, and whys. I mean, what's the idea behind this kata? And then we take a look at a couple of viable variations for each one. And the video is like, I don't know, $17, $7 for shipping and handling, and get it shipped right out to you. You can go to the website. There's a link, I think, down on the right-hand side for it. Check it out.
It's really get that in-class feel, like if you were there, So it is very good. Make sure you check that out. And again, it's www.warrior-concepts-online.com. Coming up, another short break here, and then we're talking becoming a warrior.